Alright, hello again, this is Jeff Scott talking Bootstrap. The second of 11 lectures that I plan on giving in these examples from webcodegeeks.com is on the Bootstrap Navbar. As it says, the aim of this example is to show how to create a Navbar. Alright, Navbars are responsive meta components that serve as navigation headers for your app or your site. They begin collapsed in mobile views. You'll see that in just a minute, and become horizontal as the viewport or the size increases. Navbars are important because they provide a functional and easy way for users to navigate different pages in your site. Typically, a navbar will contain a menu, a logo, menu items, and an optional search box. So the one I'm going to do next, if you cared, the one that I'm going to do next is the actual drop-down menu. So this is the same start that we had before, so I just copied the beginning stuff. And then they've got this, it's 53 lines long. It starts on the bottom of page 2, and it encompasses all of page 3 and half of page 4. So what I've done is I've copied all of this in, but I haven't moved it around, just so you can see that I indeed copied it. There it is. So this that we have right here, this will now be, that can be style 1. I don't know if we're going to put any styling in this or not, but this is exactly the same as the last one. So the first 13 lines and the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 lines are the same. So these are what I added, because that's what we've been asked to add. So I'm going to have to kind of tab all this stuff over a little bit. You can see that when you do a nav, as you can see right there, it's inside of a nav bar. We're going to make some changes to that as we go on in here. Alright, there was our nav bar header. And I'm going to actually move this down a little bit because it's very hard to see with all the stuff that's in there. Now I'm not going to go over most of this for one reason, and that reason is what we're doing in here is we're just creating a nav bar. Alright, we'll talk about the components. That I have no problem at all doing, but as far as most of the stuff that's in here, it's just filling up the nav bar, so I don't really see the need to do that. Again, it's one of my goals here is for you to be able to read this as I'm doing it, so that's why I'm pushing this down over multiple lines, not because I have this mad desire to do so. Hopefully I am tabbing this correctly, doing this right off the top of my head and by just viewing it, so I think that it's correct. Again, this looks like it is about I've got about 15 lines to go, so not trying to waste my time. I got plenty of other things I'd rather be doing. I'm not trying to waste your time, but I'm trying to give you something that hopefully you'll be able to have a takeaway here and you'll be able to use. About 10 more lines here to fix. And notice that the author here has done a nice job of, for lack of better words, letting you see everything. And he's put some comments and stuff in here, so that's a nav. That nav should be right there. So that div should be over, so that one should be over. So probably that should be over. But it's not perfect. Div, this div, I'm trying to figure out what that's going with, but I'm not sure offhand. So let's save this and let's run it. And there you can see we've got our stuff here. Okay, now notice what happens. You see this bar right here? Watch what happens when we collapse this down. Watch how these will go away. Alright, but if I click here, they're still all there. Alright, so you can see what's going on, hopefully, in there. Alright, so the author mentions on the bottom of page 4, let's go back to the handout. If you shrink to a smaller size, the Navbar would transform. So in small devices like mobile phones, you have a drop-down button that would react when you tap it. You already saw that. Now, as far as the components that are in the Navbar, this is page 5 of the handout. As it says, in this section we'll be explaining the parts of the Navbar used to make it the way it is. Let's notice that the Navbar is wrapped inside of common HTML nav tags. Alright, there are 2 classes given to this tag. Navbar defines a Navbar component of Bootstrap, and Navbar default expresses a variation used among available Navbars. Inside there we've got a div. Okay, actually several divs. The Navbar header, middle of page 5, as it says, not to be confused, as the Navbar is already a header as a whole, is just a grouping of the brand element, dedicated space for your logo, image, or name, and the necessary drop-down menu. So in other words, what they are talking about there, not there, that right there, that's the Navbar header. As you might wonder what that span class of SR only is doing, anytime you see something that's SR, that's screen reader. So anything that's in there for a screen reader is basically set up for people who have any kind of limitations, be they physical or something else. Alright, turning to page 6, Navbar links and drop-downs. It says this section opens with a div given the class of Navbar collapse, which enables this whole section to be collapsed, and an ID of BS example Navbar collapse 1, which corresponds to the ID given to the button element in the header section. So the button would trigger the code. Part of a Navbar, as mentioned on page 7, may be a form element, which is usually a search box. And if you did look at the example that was in here, hopefully you saw that. Okay? So a form element is created with the appropriate classes, and then every kind of input is grouped under a div with a class of form group. Now the last thing that's in here, because again this will be a fairly short lecture, says there exist 3 main ways of Navbar positioning for your web page. They are fixed to top, fixed to bottom, and static. So let's take a look at the difference between those. Let's go back here and let's go back to our code, and where we have here at the very top we've got nav class equals navbar default. Alright, I'm going to add to this navbar fixed top, just that. Alright, I don't think it's going to really look any different once we do this. Okay, but the point is, if we had content in here and we kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, what would end up happening is this navbar would not move. Just to prove that to you, because I want to do that. So just to prove that, I'm going to come in here and down near the bottom, after all my nav stuff, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just, you'll see what I'm doing in just a second. Alright, this will probably take a second, a little bit longer than I want it to take, but that's fine. Okay, so there's 15 paragraphs. That should be plenty to try to prove the point here. Probably 10 would have been enough, but this is fine. Okay, so there's 15 paragraphs that I'm going to add to the page right there. Okay, now this is going to look really ugly until I fix it up, and it's going to look ugly on screen, but it'll be fine. Again, I'm just going to throw all these paragraphs in here. In fact, let's do this. Save myself a little bit of time here. Copy. Almost to the bottom here. Alright, so I now have 15 paragraphs in here. There they are. But notice, and I don't have any padding in here, that's why I'm not seeing the top. But notice, even when I'm scrolling up and down, the nav bar isn't moving. That's the point to get across here. Alright, so that's the first one. Not only can you fix this to the top, in fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this line here and the first one here, and I'm now going to comment out. And that one was just the nav bar itself. The second one I will now comment out, and that's the nav bar fixed top. So we'll leave this one in, but we'll change this one to fixed bottom. Alright, go back to our same page, refresh, and notice now it's on the bottom. Alright, and again, it's not moving. even as we are moving it. Alright. We can also put in here, set it to Navbar static top, which creates a full width Navbar that scrolls away with the page. Alright, here we don't need to change any padding of the body, so let's take a look at what this last one looks like. So I will need to copy this one more time. Again, a simple little act for you if you want to go in and uncomment this stuff and play with it. So we want here class equals navbar, navbar default, navbar static top here. The best way to learn this stuff, definitely, is to just create some simple pages and start playing around with it. Now there it moved. There it is moving with it. Okay? So it is static, as you can see. So, come to the end of the second one here. Again, I realize this wasn't very long. As it says, to conclude, just like any other framework, the mission of Bootstrap is to make coding as easy as possible, yet provide organization in a hierarchical structure. It says navbars are probably one of the elements found on every website. The default navbar can be customized, and you've already seen that. So when I come back again next, I'm going to go over something similar to what we just talked about, and that is the idea of a drop-down menu or drop-down menus. So I'll be back with that in just a couple.